When I first started this video, I thought I was going to be filming an entirely different video. I thought I was going to be filming the Netherworld tour, but that's not what we're doing today. That will be coming in the future, but it's not what we're doing today. Surprise to me. As many of you may know, I have about 1 year, now less than 1 year, to finish the Beetlejuice project. And what I'm trying to do is finish up each section. Not mostly finish it, but completely finish it. And I don't want to do the Netherworld tour until the Netherworld is completely done. You might be thinking, Aira, I thought you finished all 4 spaces. Well, there is a secret 5th space that you've probably seen. It's the space where all of the wires and electrical panels and everything fits into. And it's ugly. I mean, it's cool looking because it does some really cool stuff, but it doesn't really fit in. It kind of just sticks out as something you're not supposed to see. It also needs a fan because I'm pretty much making a computer inside of this base. Well, Mr. Technology is. I'm helping. So what needs to happen is I need to install a fan and a wall outside of this wire area so that the warm air created by all of the electrical stuff gets pulled out of the project, because heat and projects made of paper and foam don't go together. So this fan wall could possibly be the most important thing I've ever built for this dollhouse. And that's what I'm going to be working on today in this video. It's a really weird thing. Probably most of you won't need to make something like this, but I need to, so let's get started. First, I need to organize this a little bit because wires are just going everywhere. Thankfully, I can disconnect it from the power, and then I can wrap up this yellow cord, which eventually won't be inside of the space. It just connects us to the internet so we can upload all the information to the computer panel. This is the fan that I need to install, and it needs to sit right about here. So you can see why I need to build a wall to hold the fan. This is an incredibly weird space to try to build a wall to match. There's these curved edges on either side, and it comes out to a point on the very top edge. So I'm using cardboard in this instance to get a curved wall, and then it's really easy to cut and change the shape. I'm first cutting off a piece on the right side, and I'm going to add it to the left side, hoping that it will give me the shape I need to bump out to that extended corner. All I'm doing to add it on is using some tape. Eventually, all of this will be reinforced, but right now I'm just starting with a single ply thin layer of cardboard to get the initial shape. I cut a mirrored piece of the original piece I created from cardboard to see if it would fit the other side. It did not, so everything is going to have to be custom fit. So I'm just taking my time with my Sharpie and cutting out pieces that I think are in the way, and then slowly fitting things together. Once I had the general shape of the space, I'm using masking tape to connect the 2 pieces together so that I don't get confused on what parts go which way. I know it's only 2 sides, but really once I transfer things to my desktop, I start to play tricks in my mind of, did this piece go to this piece? So putting it together with masking tape just makes sense in my head. The pieces come together at a 90-degree angle, which is really helpful to know. So I cut 2 rectangles, each with 90-degree angles, and these are going to be glued at the top and bottom, and these are going to connect the 2 sides together. I'm using hot glue for this, but later everything will be reinforced with a lot of PVA glue, which I highly suggest using both hot glue for quick grab and then PVA to make sure that it holds over time. This is especially important when I'm dealing with a piece that's supposed to cover an area that gets warm, and warmth and hot glue, the hot glue could possibly loosen. After I had my corners coming together at 90-degree angles, I could force the rounded edges of my cardboard to come together in the middle. This is going to create the edge of this piece that's going to cover up the space. Now I can test fit my wall to see if I think it's going to work, especially after gluing everything together. And to my surprise, it worked pretty well. It's not a perfect fit and it's definitely not perfectly symmetrical. It's a bit wonky, but for this entire project, we have been working with wonky. So I'm okay with it and we're going to move forward. Now I can start figuring out where the fan is going to go in this wall. I don't really know if it matters, but I want to center it as much as possible in the space. I'm using my Sharpie to kind of figure out where I think I need to cut the hole. And then I just went for it. I went ahead and cut out the hole because if I mess it up, I can always cut out more cardboard pieces. That's kind of the nice part about working with cardboard. It fit pretty well and I was happy with how it was looking. I knew I was going to have to incorporate the sides of the fan into the cardboard wall, but I can figure that out a little bit later. Once I got to this point, Mr. Technology informed me that we might want to put a cover on the fan because at this point, little fingers can go in there and actually disturb the fan if they wanted to. And so I don't want anyone to get hurt and I don't want to break the fan. So I designed a 3D printed cover that has like a little beetle symbol on the outside. And I'm actually really happy that I needed to do this because I did not know how I was going to incorporate the color of the fan into the netherworld. And this way I can just cover up the fan. It can still do its job, but I feel like I have a little bit more freedom to incorporate everything into this industrial look that I have in my head. So I started by painting the 3D printed fan cover with a black paint, and I'm going to add on some nail decals, these little bumps that are used for nail art, and I'm going to use those to look like bolts. I could have possibly 3D printed those as well just into the cover, but I want to add them in more places than just the fan cover, so this is why I'm adding them on afterwards. Once the glue had dried, I could go ahead and paint over them to incorporate them into the design, and then I could do a dry brush of silver paint over everything. And there's not really a particular scene that I am making this after in the movie. I'm just going with a general like sewer industrial look. And anyway, you'll see kind of in the end what's in my head, but I can't show you a Beetlejuice scene that I'm pulling this from. The fan cover had silicone corners, so I didn't want to try to glue the cover to the front of the fan. It just wouldn't glue. So I decided to sew it on through the matching holes. I could not get a needle through at the angle, so I decided to use some glue on the end of my thread, let it dry, and then I could use the stiffness that the glue created as my own little makeshift needle to push the thread through the holes, and this is going to connect my fan cover to the fan itself without having to use glue. I'm looping the string through a couple times and then I'm going to tie it off in a double knot. After that, I am going to use glue to reinforce my string, so I just kind of pushed it to go down into the hole where the string is connected, and then I am going to cover the edge of the knot with glue so it has no chance of coming off. Now, I could, in the future, if I need to, cut the string off if I need to get to the fan for some reason, but this whole wall should be removable so I could get to the fan from the back. After all of the glue dried, I was able to blend the strings into the face of the fan cover, and it's not really noticeable anymore. But the fan and the cover are definitely connected. They are not coming apart. At this point, I could refit the entire fan contraption into the hole I created, and I found I did have to make it a bit larger just because the fan cover stuck out further than the fan itself. So I adjusted that as needed, and then I decided to tack it in place with some hot glue. The reason I'm doing this while it is inside of the electrical area is because I don't want to force it out of shape if I am doing this on my desktop. I'm also going to be adding some dollhouse band-aids, which is what I call these little strips of paper with glue. It's going to help reinforce these pieces so when I do remove it from the electrical area, all of these cardboard sheets stay together and don't warp. I can now start incorporating the fan with more strips of cardboard, so I carefully cut shaped and sized each piece of cardboard to go on the outside edge of the fan. It's going to fit just behind the fan ledge and connect back to the curved wall. I realize you can't see what I'm doing on that side, so I'm doing the same thing on this other side and just going slowly. This whole process took a while to fit each individual piece and make everything look cohesive. I was a little worried on how I was going to connect the fan to the cardboard sides because there's just not really anything to connect it together with. Again, because there's those silicone pieces. So I'm using a piece of paper towel and I'm stuffing it down in the hole, and the hole has wood glue and the paper towel has wood glue. So hopefully it creates a custom plug that is the exact size it needs to be for that area and really secures the fan in place. And I double checked that I wasn't accidentally getting glue into the fan contraption while I was doing this. Once the paper towel plugs had dried, I was able to cover the remaining area with triangles of cardboard, completing the integration of the fan into my rounded walls. And then I used more dollhouse band-aids to connect everything together to make sure it's not going to move. And now I'm going to start the process of covering the outside. This is going to strengthen the exterior and also give it a sheet metal look, which is what I want to go for. I'm using poster board here, and I'm going to custom fit each one of these pieces so that it covers an area. I want to cover as much as possible and also make it visually interesting to look at. After a ton of tracing, cutting, fitting, and gluing, this is what the exterior of my piece is looking like. It's still looking a little bit rough, so to connect those areas together, I'm using some long folds of cardstock. Again, kind of like dollhouse band-aids, but these are just going to be covering up the edges. They're really not strengthening anything, they're just making it look a little bit nicer. I'm going to do this on any exposed edge to connect the pieces together, and this is going to give the entire thing a more cohesive look. And one of the most important parts is that I am connecting the poster board to the outside of the fan. This again took a lot of time and patience to get everything to fit, but here is the final look after adding all of the strips. Actually, it's not all of the strips. I need to cover the edges of the cardboard because currently the outside edges are just bare cardboard and I want to strengthen them and also cover that up. And occasionally you will see me spin the fan, making sure that I didn't accidentally drop any glue in there. I don't want there to be any reason the fan won't work, especially after all of this building that I'm doing around it. These pieces I'm actually making out of computer paper because it's going to be easier to bend them over the edge. I made a lopsided fold so it's thin on one side, thick on the other, and then I cut little snips into the thicker side, and I'll show you how this is going on. I'm adding the thin side to the exposed front, and I'm going to push that into the glue first, making sure I like how it looks. And then I am going to flip it over and add glue underneath the flaps. And then I can start pressing the flaps down individually. And by cutting these flaps, it means that it's a bit easier to fold everything over and keep it flat. If it wasn't for the flaps, it might start buckling and having some weird wrinkles in the paper. So this just makes it easier to fold over. And here's how the edge looks after I've done that all the way around, and I think it's starting to actually come together and be kind of what I had envisioned. I added some more mat board pieces to the front, kind of like if you've watched my Captain's Quarters project. So this is going to make it look like more electrical paneling is on the outside. This is really fun to do. It's called greebling, and I enjoy the process, so that was fun to do on this project. And now it's time to reinforce the inside of this because I've done a lot on the outside, but the inside needs to be just as strong. So I'm adding some strips of cardboard with the corrugation running in the opposite direction. I'm adding that to the back. I'm not adding it everywhere, but just anywhere where I think someone might push in with their hand or press on it. I just want to make that area stronger. I am also doubling up the 90-degree angle pieces that I put at the top and bottom. I want to make sure that those are incredibly strong as well because those two pieces are what's putting the tension on the walls to stay in the space. And then the top piece, eventually I am going to be putting kind of a rod through it to make sure that the wall stays in place when we don't need access to the panel. So this side of the panel is not going to look very beautiful, but it's not going to be shown at all when the project is on display. It will be covering up the wires, so I'm not too worried about how it looks. I'm more focused on the outside. Off camera, I did a layer of Mod Podge to blend all of the pieces that I previously put on together, and now I can use some of those same nail decoration pieces that I used on the fan cover. I'm going to add those to some of the areas I created over the front of this piece. And before I paint it, I want to make sure everything is still fitting in place, especially after adding the Mod Podge, which adds moisture, which can warp things. But thankfully, after adding the reinforcement to the back of the cardboard, everything was still fitting correctly. And since I'm going to be painting this front panel and you can see a little bit of the edge of the floor in this area, I made sure to trace it so I knew where I needed to add paint at that point as well. The painting process for the wall panel is going to be the exact same as the fan. I want it to look all integrated and like it's made out of the same materials. So I painted it first with a layer of black, and everything I'm doing on the walls I am going to be doing on this floor area, which will be seen as well. And after everything has a layer of black paint and has dried, then I can go back over it with the same silver paint that I used on the fan. And by doing this all at the same time, I can go back and forth and make sure everything is drying, and then I don't have to think about the floor later on. I just know that it's going to match what I've already done on the wall. This whole process definitely gave me flashbacks to the captain's quarters, which was actually kind of fun because in my most recent vlog, I got to go visit the captain's quarters and see all of the work that was done on that. So it was kind of fun to have a little flashback to that project where I learned a lot about greebling and how to make panels look like this. And once again, I'm going to fit it into place, especially so that I can see how it's blending in with the floor. Now the floor was painted on a different surface. It's a plywood surface, so it does look a little different, but I think it looks close enough to look like this whole area goes together, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. Now I know you know I can't let this piece go unaged, especially if this is like a fan that's kind of keeping the underworld going somehow. It's going to have a lot of years on it. So I'm starting with a layer of watered down black paint just to kind of get into the edges and show more of the details. And then I'm going to be just stippling on some brown paint to look like either dirt or rust, and that's going to help highlight the edges. This is really fun to do around the grate area and the bug medallion, and it really does start to pop out some of the detail. I'm not going to be adding too much onto the face of this fan piece. I want it to not be that eye-catching. I want it to be cool, and I want it to fit in with everything, but it doesn't have to be this big event as people are looking around the base. So all I'm going to be adding to it is a few posters, and thankfully I have posters that I used in the captain's quarters that will work perfectly for this. I'm imagining it's one of those big fan areas you see in giant industrial buildings, or like in sewers maybe? Yeah, sewers I think would count. I'm sure there's a lot of rotting smells in the netherworld, so maybe this fan just like keeps the air moving. So I am going to grab the file that I used to print posters for the captain's quarters. I'm going to print those out, cut them out, and use them in this space. My printer did start running out of color at this point, so I used a highlighter to color in the danger posters, but I think the different types of yellow and the different colors will look good in this area. I also printed out some Beetlejuice posters because I do have those hanging up near Juno's office, so I think it's funny to think about Beetlejuice walking by this fan area and just adding some more posters, even though no one's really in this area and probably won't take him up on his services. I started figuring out where I wanted to place everything. I want it to look kind of random, but also makes sense that they would want people to stay clear of the fan, only have authorized personnel. And then I thought it was funny to put the Beetlejuice poster just underneath the word danger. Maybe he's that self-aware, maybe he's not. I'm not quite sure. I then started aging the posters, and to do this, I'm just adding some of my paint water to dirty up the images, and then I'm using my fingernail once the water has seeped into the front of the paper to scratch away at it and just make sure it doesn't have perfect edges, and at times even remove a little bit of the image to make it look like it's an old sticker or an old sign that's been there for a long time. Now, I thought I recorded the painting of this goo, but I did not. So fast forward a little bit, I added this green goo coming out of the fan, which I thought was perfect for a Beetlejuice themed project. And I thought it looked cool running down the front of the Beetle medallion. Now that my electrical cover, my electrical panel, my fan panel, whatever you want to call it, is done, I showed Mr. Technology. He said the fan looks good, but there are too many gaps around the edges. I got the fit pretty close. It's a complicated fit. There's two rounded walls at the edges of the other parts of the diorama, and then it kind of comes to a weird point. So it's a very weird shape to try and fit something into. And I got close, but Mr. Technology is nervous that because there are gaps, that air is going to come behind the panel and the fan's just going to be pulling exterior air into the inside and then back out. And it's not going to be pulling all of the heat from inside of the project out of the project, which is what we need. So I think we're going to try some weather stripping. I think that might work. That's I think the thing we're first going to try to see if we can fill in those gaps without me having to build anything else. I added a flashlight inside so you can see the gaps that Mr. Technology is referring to, and once I added the flashlight I could see he's probably right. These gaps are just a little bit too big, and it's going to be too easy for the fan to pull in outside air instead of removing the interior air. So I went to the store, I got the weather stripping, and I'm going to try to fit the weather stripping into this space, which is going to be another tedious project. There's been so much cutting and shaping and fitting in this entire thing, but this is such an important piece that I want to make sure that it's working correctly. So this is the stuff I decided to get. It's called Sponge Window Seal, and I thought it was dense enough to make sure that air wasn't passing through the foam. It is self-adhesive, so that was kind of a nice feature to kind of stick it in place and make sure it was in the right spot. But then I did go back and add more glue to make sure that everything was going to stay, because I didn't think the adhesive was strong enough to keep it over time. I added some of it to the base, and then I added some of it to the wall itself. And it was just, you can kind of see I had to cut away at the foam. I had to add extra foam in areas where there needed to be more. And it was just another project of trial and error, trying to make sure that I got the right fit. So now I can show you the after video. I have the flashlight in there again. You will see tiny little peaks of light, but I do plan to kind of push the piece in with a pin eventually to hold it in place. So it will be squished more against the walls, which will compress the foam into place. So you can see there's very little gaps now, a lot less than there were. And I got Mr. Technology's approval that this is going to work so much better to protect our precious wiring and all of the stuff that's inside the project, as well as the paper and foam. So now Mr. Technology's here. He's helping me show you the pin that I purchased to hopefully hold everything in place. And here's how we installed it. I mean, it's kind of in place, so just make sure it doesn't pop out. You're just going to kind of support it in place right there. And I'm going to not drill into your hand.
Let's hope.
So my hope is to put it right here.
Okay. That's actually a little more that way than what you had originally pointed at.
very easily.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, that popped through.
Alright, let's see if the pin fits.
Yeah, good thing I went with that one then.
There it goes. So now it can't. If the fan's making vibrations, it won't come out. The pin was a very tight fit. It's actually like a furniture screw or something like that, but I like that it had such a flat top on it. But once we pulled it in and out a few times, I no longer had to screw it in place. And here you can see the hole that it drilled through the top of the wall. Now, I did reinforce this hole because cardboard can tear over time, so I added little bits of wood around the hole to make sure that it had something to press against, and I used a ton of wood glue to hold them in place. And now I can test everything fitting again, making sure that it works. And if you're worried about there being a lip on the top of the screw head, my foam board warps a little bit in that area, so there's plenty of room for that piece. And now it's easy for me to grab it with my fingers and pull it up when I need to get to the inside of the electrical area. So here is the final look at this very strange piece that I had to build for my dollhouse project. I'm not gonna lie, this piece was a pain to build. It was a pain to get fit correctly, but I'm so glad I took the time to do it now, and I'm not gonna be at the very last moment when I need to be finishing up my project rushing to figure this out. So I'm very thankful it's done. The other thing I'm contemplating is how difficult it's going to be to remove this fan if it ever breaks. So I'm hoping that never happens, but I do think it is possible to get out of there. It's just going to take a lot of energy and possibly a heat gun. But I'm not going to worry about that until it's something I do have to worry about. Thank goodness the cover can be pulled off and I can kind of do surgery on it if I need to. But for now, the panel is finished. We're not hooking up the fan just yet. I will see if we can hook it up for the Netherworld Grand Tour when everything is completely done. But I'm so happy this panel is finished. It was something that just wasn't on my radar until it was. And I was like, oh, that's a big project. It's a big technical project that needs to be figured out. So let me know what you think. I would love to hear your opinions in the comments down below. Let me know if you would have done something slightly different. Let me know if you've ever faced something like this. Have you ever gone to finish up a project and there was just a giant glaring hole that you had forgotten? Fun times with miniatures. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Thank you for joining me. I'm really looking forward to all the things that are coming up. And as each piece gets finished up, it's going to be more and more exciting. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. The other thing I'm contemplating. Yay, Mr. Technology! And Stormy for emotional support. Yes. Yeah. Still spins. It could just be because I am the daughter of a welder, but this just looks like a welding mask to me. I can actually see you. How many fingers am I holding up? 3.